about the movie, which I saw. I enjoyed. I know I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I did enjoy the movie. Okay, talk to you soon, Dick. Thanks. Bye-bye.
So this was Kennan, right? George Kennan. Did you guys study Kennan as the Cold War architect of the U.S. policy?
Dave,
Yeah.
as Facebook says, sorry, we're having trouble
so he
playing
wrote
this
that
video.
in reviewing
I don't know
the entire
why.
history of international affairs.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's
He
on
found hard-
Periscope.
He found it hard. to
We're
think-
live on
he
Periscope.
found
We're
it
live on
more
Twitter.
strange
I don't know what's
than
wrong with
what
Facebook.
about
and at
YouTube?
first
We're on
glance
YouTube, too.
inexplicable
Okay, so
than the
YouTube, so we're on
sudden and
YouTube,
total
and then,
disintegration and
It's on,
disappearance
but not
of the great-
Facebook.
Well, it's they're having trouble playing the video. Hopefully it'll come back up. But here you go.
No,
So,
it's the Soviet.
we'll see what
Russian
happens.
Empire
Hey,
and then the Soviet
how's it going?
Hi.
Dr. Malloy. I have no idea what you think about this show because I haven't heard from you all week. But did you get all my emails?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
you're
I'm
good?
swamped. I'm just so
Okay,
busy.
this is Rick
How you doing?
Strickland,
Meet
Luke
you.
Metz.
And Luke.
Luke, very good to meet you.
Yeah, Dr. Malloy from UD. Okay, so here's you guys.
Man, you got the AC pumping today.
Yeah, it's cold.
Oh,
It's
That's a good idea. I usually don't need that.
so, and again, like I said in the email, we won't get into a debate about the consecration.
No, I
You
think our focus should be on the current state of Russia.
yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be my guess, because you're the
I mean, as
expert
far
on
as far
those
as
kinds of
I mean,
things.
if it,
We
whether
can- but we can
whether,
touch upon
whether
it
the consecration has happened, if
No,
you
I
don't
mean-
want to wade into that, I can at least say. I mean, the argument would
No.
be, well, you know, he didn't.
we can. I mean, so here's the thing about whether it was done or wasn't done. I guess it's interesting to hear both sides, right? So I
Yeah.
don't think that should be the focus, though.
Yo, no,
We can touch on
no,
that.
but that's.
I definitely don't think it would be a distraction from, I think, what you can give for the people today. I would say we need to focus especially on like contrasting the movements afoot right now in our country and what's going on in Russia.
Well, we have to be careful from a political perspective, not to tie it with any party.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Sure.
And that's kind of the policy, like I said.
Since I
Anyways,
work-
we don't
since I
talk
work
about
for the
it.
government.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't want to be someone to call up and say, "Oh, he's violating the Hatch Act." So
Yeah.
what's afoot in our country as far as going.
Here,
to
we're about to
areas of
start,
Russia.
Rick.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, how about we mostly ask questions and you do the talking.
Well,
That's on.
we'll just play it by ear. Just
But I
we just
appreciate
can't go to
that
political
point.
parties.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But,
Oh.
so don't be.
You know what? This hey
And good morning, and welcome to GRN Alive. It is Friday morning, beautiful where I am, few clouds in the sky. It's a little cooler today than it has been yesterday. It was a hot day here in North Texas. Hopefully it's nice where you are. It's July 31st, last day of July. Can you believe it? We're almost into August 2020. We're in the 17th week in Ordinary Time. And today is the feast day of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, founder of the Jesuit order. He died in 1556. That also, of course, was a very tumultuous time in the world right after the Protestant revolt had started. And we could probably do a whole show just on the history of the Jesuit order and its founding and where it is today. But that's not going to be the focus of them. We do remember him. We asked for St. Ignatius of Loyola's intercession. And they initially served as the missionaries for the Pope. They were bound by a fourth vow of special obedience to the sovereign pontiff in regard to missions. And they emerged as an important force during the time of the Counter-Reformation in the Church in the 16th century. My name is Dave Palmer, host of this program, and Sissel is still on vacation. Remember last week she was on for half the show, Diane, and then she bailed. And interestingly, she went to Arizona with some friends. I think she's driving back.
Showed pictures on Facebook of her trip at the Grand Canyon.
I bet she's listening.
Yes, and also, she stopped by New Mexico before letting
Yeah, and our general manager down in South Texas, Richard Reyna, also went to Arizona for some personal reasons, having to do with his family. And he texted me this morning and said that they got started at 4 o'clock in the morning driving back from Phoenix. And his son Elijah at 4 o'clock in the morning said, "Dad, can we listen to GRN Alive?" And so I know how that goes. Sometimes kids, they fall asleep in the car. That rocking around. So if Elijah's still awake, good morning to you, Elijah, and to the whole family, the Reyna family driving back, probably right next on the freeway to Sissel, and as they drive back. But anyways, let's see. Dr. Chris Malloy is here in studio as usual. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, doing well.
Professor, University of Dallas, author, speaker, radio guy. Just kind of do it all, don't you?
Yeah, I also sleep.
Yes, you do. All right, we have an interesting topic today. I want to, before I get to the topic, and we got a couple of really interesting guests. I've been really excited about this program for a long time. It's been in the works for a while. I'll tell you all about it in a moment. I do want to remind you, and it ties into our theme today, that Guadalupe Radio Network is looking for rosary missionaries. And can you commit to praying the rosary every day? It just takes 15, 20 minutes. Do it with your family. It'll make a huge difference. Go to grnonline.com and you will see a link to sign up. And the intentions that we ask you to pray for are America and our world in this time of crisis, that peace may replace anger, violence, and resentment. Also the conversion of hearts, a cure for the COVID-19 virus that afflicts our world. And also for leaders, the church, our country, and our world to be led by the wisdom of the Holy Spirit. And so when you do that, if you sign up, we're also going to send you a surprise. Okay, I can't tell you what it is because it's a surprise. All right, so Diane, when you think of the rosary, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's all right, good answer, good answer. I often think of Fatima. I don't know. I don't know if I'm just trying to lead into our topic today or not, but of course, Our Lady of Fatima. You're a big devotee of Our Lady of Fatima, right, Dr. Malloy?
She called herself Our Lady of the Rosary.
Yeah, there you go. And then now we celebrate a different feast day, right? October 15th, is it? Our Lady of the Rosary, right?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay. The reason I bring this up is two reasons. There's a movie coming out called Fatima. The movie, I think it's called. It's coming out in August. Of course, nowadays, coming out, what does that mean? Is it going to be in theaters? Are we going to be allowed to go to theaters? But I think it's August 28th, according to their website, FatimaTheMovie.com. And I have had a chance to see it, but there's a thing called an embargo, where after you've seen a movie, there's a certain date that, until that date, you can't talk about it. You can't say whether you liked it or not. Isn't it kind of strange?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I
saw it as well, but I'm wondering, how do you get it to come to cities? Are they going to talk about that?
Well, I think the movie theaters, I think for the large part, are open, right? But they're limited, and then you can also have the pay-per-view and Netflix and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's coming out August 28th. We'll ask the producer, Dick Lyles, is going to be with us. So you saw the movie? Yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask him, how can you get it to come to cities?
Oh, okay.
That's the question.
Okay, all right. Hopefully it'll be coming everywhere. So anyways, he's going to join us, and it's kind of strange. I can't say anything about the movie, but so stop me before I get too far. So Dick Lyles will join us in a little while. One of the key messages of Fatima was about Russia. Of course, Our Lady came in May 13th, and then the 5 months after that, World War I was raging, and then in November of that year, the Bolshevik Revolution started. Leftist revolutionaries, led by Vladimir Lenin, launched a coup, and then in 1923, the Soviet Union was formed. I have two, I call them experts on Russia here, and the conversation we're going to have today is going to be the intersection between Our Lady of Fatima and Russia. What's going on in Russia right now? Was the consecration of Russia carried out? Most people would say yeah, but some people continue to say no, it didn't happen. Rick Strickland is a convert to the Catholic faith. He is a parishioner at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish in Keller, which is in the Fort Worth Diocese, for those of you outside of North Texas. And he also is a retired naval intelligence and currently works as an inspector with the Department of Homeland Security. So he really has his finger on the pulse of a lot of things international. He brought with him, and you can see him if you're on the social media platforms. You can see our guests that I have on right now. I think it's only YouTube and Twitter, right? And Facebook? Facebook is on now too. Okay. He brought with him his godson, Luke Metz, who is currently studying for a master's degree in international affairs at Texas A&M at the Bush School there. Luke spent last summer in Russia. Okay, and as part of an exchange program, and he speaks almost fluent Russian. Would that be right, Luke?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay, so got to be on the ground, talking to the people, witnessing kind of the affairs there. And so he's going to come, and Rick as well. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Dave. Good to see you.
And you have a particular interest in Russia, don't you? I mean, you in our conversations, if you guys and I go out at lunch, Russia seems to come up a lot.
Well, only the Fatima, to me, it was a central message of Fatima that Russia must be converted, that Russia must change or it spread errors around the world. And, we saw how the non-conversion of Russia led to between 7 and 12 million deaths in the country as a result of that communist revolution and the civil war that followed. And then, the errors of communism, which is atheism, really. It's atheism. It goes to China, and then you have, how many, 60 million people?
Well, yeah, China, between 75 and 125 million people dying.
Let me, before we get into the thick of it, let me give a little bit of background, because I know many people are familiar with Fatima, but let me just give the background so that we can have some baseline of what we're talking about. In the July 13th appearance at Fatima, Mary asked that Russia be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart, right? Sister Lucia later recorded in her memoirs that she heard Mary say, quote, "God asks the Holy Father to make, in union with all the bishops of the world, the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, promising to save it by this means." These words, and I'm reading an article here, were later interpreted to mean that Russia would be saved from communism through the prayers of Mary's heart. All right? Whether or not Russia was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart has long been debated. On March 25th, 1984, Pope John Paul II, now St. John Paul II, offered a prayer of consecration for, quote, the world and the human race. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, when he was prefect for the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, spoke with Sister Lucia after that event and said that she confirmed this act by St. John Paul fulfilled, quote, what Our Lady wished. Okay, so according to John Paul II, Cardinal Ratzinger, Sister Lucia, that's pretty much agreed, right? They all think that John Paul II did consecrate Russia, right? The Archbishop Metropolitan of Moscow, Paolo Pezzi, in September of this year, told Catholic News Service that he believed that he had witnessed Russia's conversion. He said, quote, "I thank our God that I became one of the witnesses of the return of Russia to Christ." He added that Mary still calls Russia to convert to Christ, but she did not say what form this conversion would take. And then the only thing I want to say, and then I want to turn it over to you two, and also Dr. Malloy as well, is Mary also warned about the spreading of the evils of Russia, right? And I think talked about communism. Today we see that very evident in our culture. I'll just give you a few examples. Maybe the most powerful political force in our land right now would be Black Lives Matter. Co-founder Patrice Kohler said in a video from 2015 that she and her fellow organizers are trained Marxists, making clear their movement's ideological foundation. She was a protege of Eric Mann, former agitator of the Weather Underground domestic terror organization. She said, quote, "The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia, the other founder, in particular, are trained organizers." She said, I also found interesting the debate this week about America's frontline doctors, where these doctors held a press conference to talk about a alleged, the treatment for COVID-19, and all the big tech media companies basically deleted it. I was trying to find an article this morning just about that story, and every single article that I found on Google was negative towards the doctors. One of them said the ongoing battle between social media companies and COVID-19 misinformation pushers, including U.S. President Donald Trump, stepped up again this week thanks to a new viral video, and it has exposed once again how difficult addressing conspiracy theories is. So many people are saying, okay, the media is starting to silence people. There are signs, I guess you could say, that there's a socialist element, Marxist element that's taking hold, a revolutionary spirit in America, and many people are concerned. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic, is the consecration of Russia. And I think, Rick, you are a proponent, and you would agree with Sister Lucia and John Paul II and Cardinal Ratzinger that it actually did happen, right?
I would. Our Lord says you judge somebody by their fruit, right? So when I look back at communist Russia, that was an atheist country promoting atheist ideology, and I look at Russia today, I don't see the same country. I see a country that has pivoted back to Orthodox Christianity and placed it, pretty much center. And you would say, well, Rick, what evidence do you have of that? Well, you have President Putin, who, you could argue whether he is for real with his orthodoxy or not. But he's sort of, in my view, kind of like a Constantine figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Constantine pivoted Rome from paganism to Christianity, made it legal in the Milan Edict in 313, and Putin, through the edicts that they're passing, the laws that they're passing, the anti-propaganda laws that you can't promote non-Christian values in the country in 2013, and then in July of this year they passed a law on marriage that says marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's a Christian concept, along with elevating the church. And I mean, he had one comment that was interesting. Putin said there, and this was in a film that was sponsored by the Russian government, so you could say, oh, this is Russian propaganda, but there was a spiritual vacuum. This is Putin after the fall of the Soviet Union. True values are religious values. The return to religion marked the natural revival of the Russian people. So that's kind of his thinking. So if the consecration was made, and there is evidence that they've installed the church and are returning to Christian values, and they're returning to Orthodox Christianity. So if you're a Protestant in Russia, you're out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an Orthodox or a Catholic, and there's a few other state officially recognized religions, you're okay. But in Putin's world, or in Putin's mind, he thinks a pivot back to Orthodoxy is going to be good for the Russian people, in a nutshell.
Can I ask about homeschooling as well? How does homeschooling fare in Russia now?
Do you know anything
Yeah.
about the homeschooling?
I mean, I never really encountered it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me officially bring Luke in again to the conversation. Luke Metz again spent last summer in Russia, and what were your general impressions? You're a convert to the Catholic faith also, right? You came in, is that right, around the same time Rick did?
Yes.
And so Rick's saying if you're a Protestant, pretty much out of luck. I don't know if it's officially illegal, but there's not a practice of Protestantism. But there is Catholicism allowed, even though the majority of people are Orthodox, right? What were your impressions?
In regards to Protestants, I didn't really encounter any. I did meet people that were Mormon, and I know recently, maybe a year or two ago, they, I think, arrested around 1,000 Mormons. So you can see, I guess, different sects of people who consider themselves Christian could be persecuted. But in regards to Catholics or Orthodox, I didn't really see that being the case. When I was in Moscow, it wasn't as prevalent to be Catholic. There was maybe 2 cathedrals. The rest, I mean, there's Orthodox churches everywhere. I mean, we'd go, just go explore the city, and all of a sudden we run into this beautiful cathedral, and it's like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
But in St. Petersburg, Cecil spent time there. There was about 6 or 7 Catholic churches, cathedrals so it was more prevalent there, but that's also, they consider that more westernized.
Yeah.
Is it Roman, the Roman Rite, or?
Roman, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. What about, I'm guessing you got to talk to a lot of the people there, have conversations. Do people want to speak openly about religion? Do they want to speak openly about politics? Is there, I feel a suppression, not official, but, like we've said many times, if you're working in, big corporation America and you have a certain viewpoint about topics or moral issues, you better keep your mouth shut. I mean, if you want to keep your job. I don't know, did you get a sense of how free people are to express their views politically or about moral issues, or was there more of a hush-hush sense?
I think for us it was different because we're Americans.
Yeah.
So, Russians, they love Americans over there. They're pretty enamored by us. So I think whenever we talk to just random Russian people that we meet, they probably maybe they felt more comfortable discussing topics that normally they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So that I think that might be a factor. But yeah, we would discuss things like politics, religion. It was kind of interesting because it's similar because I also studied like multiculturalism in Israel, like different like Hasidic Jews, things like that. And it was interesting. It's kind of similar with Russia. You have the majority of the population being Orthodox, but it doesn't necessarily mean all of them practicing, but they'll identify as Orthodox.
Mhm.
And same in Israel, you'll have people that are, well, they're Jewish, but they don't necessarily practice Judaism.
It's heartening though that they kept that identity
Mhm.
through those 70 years.
Yes, that's
you know?
yeah.
That's just remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me open up the phone lines. If anybody has a comment, question, our guests in studio, Rick Strickland and also Luke Metz. Luke spent last summer in Russia. Rick has a lot of international experience. Luke is studying international affairs. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. And yeah, go ahead, Dr. Malloy.
Rick, I've got a question. Have you read John Haffert's Russia Will Be Converted?
I have not read that.
So John Haffert was this journalist, probably the foremost mid-century, mid-20th century journalist on Fatima.
Mhm.
He went there, he spoke 8 languages fluently. So he's a very talented journalist. He went there and was photographing at a blessing during adoration, witnessed a conversion right in front of his eyes. And he had photos before and photos after. So at that point, he actually became a Fatima, a very interested Fatima scholar. That was 46, I believe.
Mhm.
So then he wrote this book, Russia Will Be Converted. And I think it touches our situation now. One of the things he starts off with is a chapter on communism. And he says, we tend to think of communists as monsters immediately. And he said, actually, you need a subtler understanding of them. And this is in the middle of the McCarthy era. And so he says, actually, one of their foremost concerns is the suffering that people endure. And one of the operating principles is atheism. So he said the reason they are so bad is that they're atheists. And what do they do with their lives? He puts it at the beginning, saying basically most people who are atheists would say, I'm either going to take my life or become a communist. And anyway, he tries to paint it like they're out for the solution, and then the solution is totally godless and awful. But anyway, I ask because one of the things he does is stress the other side of Our Lady's requests, which is first Saturdays, as a minor part actually. Daily duty of life, reparation, offering your life, being holy, giving the sufferings of the day to Jesus Christ. And this is like the whole book. It's about 150 pages. Is on do your daily duty, and he's got interviews with Lucia, who's saying exactly that. She's like, I want to come back to daily duties, and so I know when I come back to that, if my requests, I think it's in the plural. There in the English translation, it's always in the plural. My requests, threefold. One is consecration. 2 is that is by the Pope, and the second is daily duty, and the third is the first Saturdays. But Haffert reads the consecration almost as a, and maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but as a sign that our daily duty has been done, that we have been converted, we as Catholics. So then, if you look at sin abounding in the world, we're the problem. You know what I mean? But the burden's on us.
We got somebody that called in, but do you want to respond to that, Rick?
Yeah, in the more I look at this whole situation in the world and errors spreading around, the Rosary and the First Saturday devotion, but especially the Rosary, that seems to be our go-to weapon. And you started the show asking for prayer warriors for saying the Rosary, and all of these errors and all of the issues, both in our own society and abroad, can be conquered with the Rosary. I mean, which Pope said it? I could conquer the world if I had an army of people playing the Rosary. So that really is our solution.
Yeah. Let's go to the phone lines. Austin has called in, 877-757-9424. We're talking about the consecration of Russia. We have 2 experts in studio. Well, three if you consider Dr. Malloy an expert, and I certainly do. We have Luke Metz, who spent last summer in Russia. He's studying for a master's degree in international affairs at Texas A&M University, and also Rick Strickland here as well. Austin from Odessa, Texas, has called in. Austin, thanks for calling in. What's your comment or question about this topic? Good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Austin, thanks a lot. You gave us a lot to talk about. Who wants to go? Dr. Malloy first?
Can I comment? So formulating Austin's question essentially, I think would be this. Is it sufficient to name a genre to consecrate the species? So the genre is the world, right? And Russia is the species, you know. So, for instance, I remember praying with some lay folks at a monastery, and this one woman said, "I pray for every soul on the face of the earth." You know, I just cracked up because the petitions were mounting. But the thing is then she's not praying. She is praying for her mother with cancer, say, but in another sense, she's not.
Yeah.
So that, I guess that's the question: was Russia ever consecrated by name by the Pope and the bishops together?
Yeah, and that's the example I use. You got a sick child, you ask a priest to come over and bless this child. He comes over and he blesses the house, he blesses the family, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess the kid was blessed because he's in that family, but I was kind of hoping for a specific blessing. Kind of what you're saying as well. Rick, what do you think?
So, yes, I think everybody's correct. The word Russia was not used, and I think, stepping back a minute, a lot of probably inside, and I'm not going to speak for a pope, but just thinking to myself and aloud, looking at the situation, understanding that there are Russian Orthodox in Russia, and there was probably some concern in the Vatican that, hey, if we say Russia, maybe we'll offend our Russian Orthodox brothers by doing what we're doing. So that may be one reason why the word wasn't used. I don't know. But
that's a very reasonable.
But I think that's a pretty good assumption that you've probably got a cardinal or two saying, we don't want to offend our Russian brothers because, I mean, essentially they're the same religion we are. I mean, naturally they don't answer to the bishop in Rome, but they have many of the tenets of Catholic faith.
They have the creed and the sacraments, most of the creed and the sacrament, and all the sacraments.
And the holy orders
But
and things like that.
the schism is a real factor.
It is.
And that now, Haffert points to this. Very interesting. I think it's an interesting book. He's very responsible. He's articulate. He said in his interview with Lucia, in the 40s, she said that she personally believes that the conversion of Russia will take place with the Oriental Rite.
Mhm.
In other words, obviously they're not going to become Romans,
Right.
which is why they resist, by the way, the Eastern Catholics. Am I correct about that?
Let me real quickly jump in. Austin, thank you so much for the call. Let me let Austin get on with his day, so I appreciate your call very much. If anybody else wants to call in, 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. That was a really good call. Appreciate Austin calling in there from West Texas. Anyways, do you want to comment on that, Rick? Or what Dr. Malloy was saying? Because I do want to talk about the errors of Russia. Luke, go ahead.
What was your question again?
So the Eastern, did you see Eastern Catholic churches over there?
I don't believe so. So like when I was in St. Petersburg, I went to Roman Catholic churches. So I don't know personally. I didn't really talk to anybody about what their idea of Eastern Catholics were.
Let me change gears a little bit because we're kind of running out of time. I want to talk about the errors of Russia. Okay, and I know Rick, you and I have had this conversation. The immediate error of Russia spread in 1917. It went into Mexico within a few years, right? China, Cuba. I mean, I think there are 5 communist countries right now, and many people would say, like I said at the beginning of the hour, that we're beginning to see some pretty scary elements here in America, some overt Marxist. Luke, you told me that you have college professors that are overt Marxists, who not only are Marxists, but are overtly indoctrinating students and not hiding it, even in your experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's no surprise, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and not saying that like they're bad people or anything necessarily, but like we had a professor who, he was an outspoken Marxist, and it had nothing really to do with the topic of what our class was supposed to be discussing, but he kind of put in Marxist writings. I think part of it was was it Das Kapital? Was one of them. It had nothing to do with our class, but he had a whole week devoted to that. And then even I remember we came into class that day, and there was one student. He was obviously frustrated, so he came in, turned his paper in, and then left. And but
in protest.
Yeah, and so the professor, he said, "Today I'm going to convert some of you."
Oh wow, that's scary. Rick, what do you think of the spreading of the error of Russia? I know you believe in, and I think there's a lot of evidence that Russia, in many ways, is heading in a good direction in a Christian revival sense, but much of the world may be heading in another direction. What do you think overall about the spreading of the evil in relation to Fatima and the message?
Well, the Fatima message was that unless she was converted, it would spread. So she was not converted. She said it would be done late, and then she would turn around. But it's kind of like letting the cat out of the bag, because everywhere these errors go, usually you have bloody revolution. So the fear for everybody around the world is always with the communist errors is, we don't want that here, and we certainly don't want it in the United States or anywhere. But if you look at all of the countries, whether in Mexico they had that terrible revolution, in communist China, Luke mentioned the 70 to 120 million people killed. So those eras of atheism clash with whatever culture it's coming into, because I would argue by nature we were created a human body and a spirit, and so that atheism goes against the spirit, and therefore you're going to get a clash. And you'll see that.
Yeah, absolutely, totally, eye to eye. One thing I would add is I see the errors of Russia as threefold. The first is atheism, even more important than communism, but they're inseparable. They're the Marxism, and then thirdly the schism. So that would be a softer kind of error, but sort of in the background. It didn't start in 1917, but that the full conversion would be union with the church, full communion with the Catholic Church.
Right.
All
And
right.
I mean, can you imagine what a force? The best novelists
Yeah.
in the history of the world. I mean, they are great people.
Well, if you look at Russian music,
Yeah.
Russian literature, it's and Russian architecture, it's really great.
Well, they created method acting too. So.
Yeah.
Ooh, ouch. Is that good? I thought it was not good.
Yeah.
That's how you look at it.
That'll be a whole different show. We'll talk about method acting. All right, we are good. Just about 2 minutes before we got to take a break, and Dick Lowes is going to join us, the producer of the Fatima movie. Anything else while we're on this general topic of Our Lady's message as played out in Russia, the errors spreading around the country and the world? Any other last thoughts before we take our break, Dr. Malloy? No, we go ahead and take.
I have to say, while Pope Benedict was reigning, some European parliamentary senators asked Pope Benedict to consecrate Russia in the way envisioned in that statement, like with the Pope and the bishops. Did you know that?
I did not.
Because they were the Ukraine. We had there's various kind of seemingly aggressive actions. There's a dispute with Turkey and all this kind of stuff going on back then. The Syria thing, and so some senators, 2 of them in the parliament, in the European whatever government,
Yeah.
they asked for it.
Yeah. I just wonder if any.
So it's not just nut jobs like me.
I wonder if any future pope is going. Would that be a insult to John Paul II to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and carry out this consecration that many people didn't think happened, or is it we're just going to have to deal with what we have and you either believe it happened or you didn't, and nothing else is going to happen by the church? I guess that's the question.
Well, earlier Lucia said it didn't happen, but she said real blessings came. Pius XII, twice, once by himself he consecrated Russia, once with the bishops he consecrated the world, and that seems to be the back and forth thing.
Yeah.
But she said real blessings came.
Well, I mean, you had several attempts in 42 and 48, 67, 52, 82 and 84. So it's either we just keep trying and we fail, but as a result of all of this discussion and we there's no doubt that we can definitely say that Russia has returned to orthodoxy. We can say that positively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the Russian people as a whole, they're not attending church like they could, like 10%, 9%, something like that, attend regularly. But they're not persecuted. Catholics can practice there, and orthodoxy is elevated and looked to as a good moral fiber of society, which wasn't the case under communism.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and you see a lot of religious symbols that are being kind of more prevalent in society. So, like St. George on the Russian seal, you see that everywhere. The double-headed eagle. A lot of people think it's. I mean, you can interpret the double-headed eagle in multiple ways, but you have the unity of East and West. But also, if you look at what the eagle's holding, it has the. I forgot what the official name is, but it's the orb with the cross on it,
Yeah.
and then the scepter, and it's the unification of church and state.
Yeah, interesting. Let's take our break. Dick Lowes, producer of the Fatima movie, coming out in August, is going to join us to talk about the movie and what it's about, the take that they have on Fatima. So it should be an interesting conversation. If you want to join us, 877-757-9424 is the phone number. We'll be back with GRN Alive Friday right after this. All right, good conversation. That was a good call. Yeah.
That was a good call.
Because that guy was able to really just.
Your audio's off on the radio, but like for something, can't place the sound card on that system. Yeah, if you're
Yeah, some technical issue. But it's typically not like this. But.
Together, we can bring the power of prayer to bear on a dark world in need of Christ. Log on to grnonline.com/missionary. Well, what do you think? Is the new
Oh, I. Let's see. Our Lady of Victory, October 7th. Okay. So I don't know exactly what angle he wants to take this with, but we'll just kind of
Yeah, at this point, he's the
yeah.
primary.
However you like to listen, GRN radio stations, live audio streams online, mobile apps, podcasts, and live video, social media at GRN Online.
All right, we are back. This is GRN Alive Friday edition. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. I know this whole Fatima in Russia, it's a topic that many of you have in mind. Really enjoyed the call from Austin out in West Texas. Appreciate him calling. And also appreciate, we're talking about the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. And our Vice President Toya texted me and said October 7th. I think I said October 15th, so I stand corrected. So thank you, Toya. October 7th is the Feast of the Holy Rosary that we talked about earlier. So, all right, Dick Lyles is producer of the movie Fatima the Movie. If you go to fatimathemovie.com, you can see that according to the website, it's going to be coming out on August 28th, and it tells the story of Fatima, a powerful and uplifting drama about the power of faith. It tells the story of a 10-year-old shepherd and her two young cousins in Fatima, Portugal, who report seeing visions of the Virgin Mary. And so we want to get straight to Dick Lyles and get his take on the movie. And Dick, good morning. Thanks for joining us at GRN Live this morning.
Good morning, Dave. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, I saw the movie, as did Dr. Chris Malloy, and I know we're kind of embargoed from talking too much about it and what we thought, so I'm going to let you do the talking so I don't get myself in trouble. But I did appreciate seeing it, I'll say that. You know, Fatima is something that has been portrayed in films a number of times. What was the idea, what was the different angle or the different take that you and the others involved in the movie wanted to express through this movie? Yeah, it is amazing that they were entrusted with such an important message at such a tender young age. And you talked, Dick, about the tumultuous time, and I know we recently, a few years ago, passed the 100th anniversary of Fatima, but it seems like the message is as pertinent today as it was back then, maybe even more so. How do you think, and why do you think this movie, this message, is important in 2020? Hmm. Yeah, and the message of Fatima was, there was a lot there. The consecration of Russia, the secrets. There's the vision of hell. There's so much, and obviously in a hour and a half, 2 hour movie, you can't tell the whole thing. How did y'all decide what parts of it to focus in on, and what were the most important messages, especially for a 2020 audience? Yeah, certainly did. Dick Lyle's joining us. The movie is Fatima the Movie. You can go to fatimathemovie.com. And Dick, everything's turned upside down in 2020, and putting movies out I know is probably more challenging than it's ever been before. I see August 28th as the release date. Well, what does that mean as far as somebody listening right now that wants to go see it? Is it going to be in theaters or limited? How can people get it?
Dick, if it's not. Dick, if it's not showing in your city, is there any way of requesting it in your city? Can those buyouts get it to come to a city?
Yeah, 877-757-9424 is the number. Dick Lyle's joining us, producer of Fatima the Movie. Go to fatimathemovie.com.
Where'd you film it? Wow.
Wow. Interesting. We talk about the situation in the world, the situation in America. I just want to maybe comment on, there's so much going on right here in this country, and the Fatima message. We spent most of the first part of the program talking about Russia and the errors of Russia and communism and all that. And so a movie like this could really make a big impression. I mean, what would you like people, how would you like this to change or get into the hearts of people, especially in America, when they watch a movie like this? What's the message? nice. Very nice. Dick, we appreciate you joining us, and we encourage everybody to go to that website. You can watch the trailer. You can find out more information about the movie. Fatima the Movie. Go to FatimaTheMovie.com. Just about out of time here, Dick. Anything else you want to convey to our listeners before we say goodbye to you?
And what about Dick? Dick, one last question. Age group. What would be the minimum age you would say? 4 or 5?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Dick, thanks so much. Appreciate your time this morning. FatimaTheMovie.com coming out next month, and so check it out and do go see it. It's a good movie to support. Appreciate your time, Dick. Thank you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, we got about 1.5 minutes before we end the radio portion of GRN Alive, and Rick and Luke, and I'm not sure about Dr. Malloy. You guys hang around. You got to get back to.
I'm running. You can see me running in the studios now.
Yeah.
I've got to get to a condo. It's being carpeted.
Okay. All right. So we're going to hang around, do the after show. Ben had a few issues with social media and the audio, so I'm sorry if you're on social media. The audio's been a little bit sketchy this morning, but I think everybody on the radio can hear us. And so, anyways, Rick, Luke, anything based on the conversation with Dick there that struck you, or do you want to wait till the after show to comment?
No. I think it would be an amazing show for Catholics to get out and support this movie. You know, we've been in a time where we've been restricted, and if we could go in mass to theaters, you have all these Catholics and around the country just flood these theaters with this movie. I think it would show a lot of people, hey, we're still here, and we're all united, and we want, this is a good message.
All right,
Yeah.
Very good. All right, Rick, thank you. Luke, thank you. They're going to hang around. Diane, thanks for running the board, and pray for Sissel and her safe return. Also, Richard Reyna and all those who are traveling. And Dr. Molloy, thanks. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Great seeing you.
Hope you get that carpet laid effectively. All right, the after show will be after this. And don't forget the replay on tomorrow morning, and also Joe and the team Monday at the same time with GRN Alive Monday. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend. St. Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us today. It's kind of weird when you can't talk about the movie and you're talking about the movie, but you can't talk about the movie, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Well, yeah.
but I guess he doesn't have to abide by the embargo. And he
Not being the
talk
producer,
about it.
right?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Excited to see.
I like the trailer's really good.
Are we still on, like, right now? Have you
Yeah,
seen
but
it?
I think there's a
I've seen the
problem with
trailer,
new
I haven't seen the
sound
movie,
card
though.
Kent put in there.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna hear both the programming and y'all speaking.
So we can't do an after show.
No, I don't think. Well, we can try. Let's just try and see. And
See how it goes. You want to give it a shot. She's saying that they might be hearing the programming and us at the same time, and if that's the case, there's no point in doing it.
Sure.
But
let's just try.
yeah, give it a shot. Are we ready right now?
Let me put y'all. Hold on.
Basically, just is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about, or let me. And Diane, you're going to come in once you figure out. Okay. Are we ready, Diane?
Yes.
All right, we're back. This is the after show, and we're trying to figure out whether or not we're able to do the after show. So let's just first of all find out. Diane's going to give us the thumbs up in just a moment. I hope you enjoyed the radio program this morning. Dr. Malloy had to go work in his condo, and so Rick Strickland and also Luke Metz joining me here in studio as we continue our conversation about Our Lady of Fatima and Russia as well. I'm looking at Diane to see if we do in fact have the go-ahead. Is everything okay, Diane? We think, why don't we just go ahead and proceed onward, assuming that we're okay, and then if Diane, pulls the carpet from under our rug, from under us, no pun intended, that's what Dr. Malloy is going to go work on, is a carpet. All right, so Rick and Luke, just as by way of introduction, since I haven't introduced him here in the after show, Rick has a lot of international experience, retired Navy intelligence, currently works for the Department of Homeland Security. Luke Metz is studying international affairs, getting a master's degree at Texas A&M University, also spent a summer in Russia last summer, and so they both have experience with Russia. We're talking about Our Lady of Fatima, her words about consecration, the errors of Russia, and how it's being played out in Russia and the world today. So with that introduction, Rick, go ahead and take it away. What else would you like to mention to our audience?
Well, something that probably if you asked the most Americans about Russia, they may still be under the assumption that it's still communist, and has heavy communist influence, which is not the case right now. And they would also, Putin kind of has a bad reputation for a lot of different reasons, but strip away the politics of it and just strictly look at what his focus is on Orthodox Christian culture in Russia. Whether he's a strong man and all these other political issues, I'm not really wanting to look at that. I just want to look at the result of his policies towards the Orthodox Christianity that was in Russia prior to the communists, and how he has basically put a central part of his government to pivot back to that Orthodox religion, which is Christian. So the message from Fatima is that Russia would be converted if it were consecrated. And so really the question for us right now is to just thinking is, did the consecrations that were tried over and over and over again, it appears, actually have an effect to push Russia back to orthodoxy?
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about Russia 1916 or Russia 1910 or 1900, or what did it look like? What changed in 1917 as far as religion in Russia?
That's where I'm going to turn to Luke.
Okay.
So, I would say at that time period, you had the Tsardom and everything. You had the Russian Empire. Orthodoxy was prevalent throughout Russia, and I think it's important to look at Russian history when you're trying to understand why people return to Orthodoxy kind of in full force. Why so many Russians are Orthodox. So historically, Russians have kind of viewed Moscow as the third Rome. So, Rome eventually fell, which was the center of Catholicism, then Constantinople fell, and then, so they see Moscow as the center
of Christianity.
Essentially, yeah, the last, one of the last bastions of Christianity, which, as we all saw in, 1918, the Soviet Union, and then that collapsed. But it's kind of as though the Russian government, and probably in conjunction with the people, is kind of returning Russia to that era, essentially, where they're this bastion of, for them, orthodoxy. So you have pre-1916 Russian Empire, all that orthodoxy being very prevalent, and then all of a sudden communism, and then you have 70 years of not just a lack of faith, but also culture. I mean, it really stripped the Russian people of their culture, their religion, just a lot of things.
Would that include the arts? You mentioned
Yes,
acting and dance and music, and communism is not a real creative type of. People don't flourish during communism, do they?
No, you look at the architecture of the communist culture, and it is bland and dull and gray and it's ugly. When you speak of Russian culture, you're speaking of the pre-communist,
Pre-communism, yeah.
whether it's Tchaikovsky or the Russian architecture and arts.
Dostoevsky, Pushkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking back at this 1963 congressional record where the communist goals in America were, I guess, submitted as kind of a warning to America of what the communists in America are trying to do. And there was one of them, and I'm trying to find it, where basically it's saying make art ugly and do you know what I'm talking about? I'll see if I can find it. But I was like, well, who would propose that? Who wants ugliness? But it seems like that's almost part and parcel with the communist ideology. It's not a beautiful type of ideology. It doesn't promote beauty and goodness, does it?
Yeah, it's more sorry.
Utilitarian.
Yeah, utilitarian.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't talk today.
Which if you look at like 60s and 70s architecture in the United States, it is, I mean, most people want to tear it down.
Yeah, I found it. Let me just read this. It says, number 23, and these again are the communist goals as submitted, Congressional Record, 1963. Rick was actually the one that brought these to my attention. Number 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. I mean, who says that? I mean, really?
It was interesting because while I was studying Russia and everything, one of the students brought forth their project, and theirs was over fashion in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the fashion was to make you look as bland as possible.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really any. I mean, it's very basic colors, very basic everything.
Yeah, yeah. And Dr. Malloy during the program was talking about a book that he had read, and it, I mean, what's the good of it? I mean, when you've got these professors that you talked about, Luke, who are promoting Marxism, and so I believe even from a Thomistic standpoint, nobody pursues evil. They always perceive a perceived good.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where Marxism or communism, everybody's equal and everybody gets kind of equal treatment, and there's a certain kind of idealistic equality. That's but what's the positives of all this? I mean, what's good about it?
What's good about communism?
Yeah, there's got to be something that's I think what Dr. Malloy was getting at.
I think why it's romanticized is, I guess, if you look at it in theory, I mean, if you have a society where everyone's entirely equal, I mean, I guess you could say that there's good in that. But inherently there's going to be some negatives to that. But I think people just look at the positives. They see, like if you look at Russia, the Russian Revolution, a lot of what kind of caused the Bolshevik Revolution is a lot of the veterans of Russian wars from previous, well, not Napoleonic wars, but previous conflicts they've been in, they went out and fought just like they always had. And then they started bringing in fresh people that were, no experience, conscripts, stuff like that. And they were going to these front lines experiencing these horrible things. I mean, it's war. War in World War I, which it was even worse. And so when you have those tragedies, you're being exposed to these horrendous things, you want to turn to something that you think will fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, maybe even the Russian soldiers in World War I, seeing a society where everything's equal, we're all going to be treated equal, we'll have an equal stake, that's going to sound better than, hey, I'm on the front lines, there's a czar who's sitting back at home, living in a palace, and I'm over here sitting in a trench fighting Germans. So I think that's probably where the appeal comes from. And then, you just have separations of wealth classes, just issues with envy, I think. Say you're not as well off, you're going to look at somebody who's really rich and you're going to want that. Or you want to be equal to them. Yeah.
What do you, Rick, I know you've kind of said that Putin is trying to make Russia great again, a return to orthodoxy. Where do you think he's trying to take the country? Where do you see it going if Putin has his way in the next 10, 20 years? Well, where will it go?
Well, he'll have his way until 2036, so...
Is he in that long?
Yeah. that was the,
Yeah.
20
that was just past.
16 more years?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the next time they're going to have an election.
Yeah, so
Wow.
so from my position on Putin, I just look and see that he wants to pivot the country back to this orthodoxy as a main pillar of their society. And it's sort of like it took the communists decades to push that ideology. If he's successful in pushing the Russian people back to this orthodox religion, and he feels like that will be his legacy.
Hmm. In this country, anybody, and we see it every day, anybody that really dislikes the president, or whether it's a Republican or a Democrat president, can voice their opinion. I mean, we see it all the time. People on talk shows, or people. I mean, and I think that's a good thing. You ought to be able to have the freedom of expression. We talked a little bit about this during the radio program, Luke, about freedom of expression, and but when you're president, I mean, gosh. He's president for the next 16 years? I mean, how did that come about?
Well, he's essentially been president
Yeah.
since, 2004 or something.
2000.
Do they have free? Do they have? I mean, there's a lot of talk about
Well, they have
this
the
upcoming election, and who knows, if it's going to be. I don't know if we can have an election in this country that's fair. It just seems like there's so many issues and so many problems. But that's a whole other issue. But do they have fair elections in Russia?
Officially, probably yes, but unofficially, no.
Okay, are you able to elaborate on that?
So,
Or what exactly do they do that makes it not officially legit?
So, as I mentioned to you earlier, and we, while we were there, we talked to many different Russian citizens and stuff. Just what the political landscape is like. What do you think of Putin? Things like that. And I mean, we got mixed reviews, and I think for some of them, they were more afraid to, in public, kind of mention that they were anti-Putin. I know some people had talked about how their jobs would actually require them to take a photo of who they voted for.
Oh wow!
And so they would have to take the photo back to their boss, and if they didn't vote for Putin, you don't have a job. So, and in that regards, obviously there's going to be some coercion unofficially. Now, officially, they're having elections.
Yeah.
People go in and vote for whoever you want, but it's more of like, well, if you vote for somebody else, then now you have to find a new job, and nobody really wants to do that.
Really, Putin as a political, because our system is not theirs. He is, they're sort of having elections, but I think 50 or 100 years from now, or 200 years when they look back, maybe the one thing that you could look at that may be real is, did the country pivot back to the Orthodox religion? And I think that is probably going to be what you say. So, I kind of made the analogy before that, maybe you look at Constantine, who was a Roman emperor and who made, Christianity illegal in 313. And was he a real Christian? There's people even today that say, no, he was just, he was still a pagan. He just, legalized Christianity. But I believe he is in some of the churches, and I believe in the Orthodox Church he's a saint. So, and in the Eastern Rite Catholic Church he is a saint, but I don't think in the Latin Rite.
Yeah.
But so you have this figure who, in Putin, was a KGB agent, and that right there, everybody, you go suspicious right there.
Oh yeah.
So, KGB, and is this guy really an Orthodox? So, or really trying to set Orthodoxy up? And so there's always that suspicion, and there was that suspicion with Constantine too. So, it's just sort of two figures that are, that we have.
Yeah.
I think going to back to kind of like you're saying, how do people feel? How can they express their opinions? Something that's interesting, especially in my studies about Russia, is that if you look at Russia historically, they're culturally extremely different than us, and throughout hundreds of years, the czars, the population favored a strong leader, and I mean, Putin's no different. I'm actually one of the most confusing things to me is one time I met this Ukrainian girl, and she asked me why do Americans not like Stalin?
Not like Stalin?
Oh, that me. Sure. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, but yeah, not like Stalin. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, and you're
Yeah.
you're Ukrainian. 7 million Ukrainians died because of policies from Stalin, from starvation, and it's the idea of them wanting just a strong leader, and that kind of goes back hundreds of years.
Mhm.
Mongolian.
Because strong leader means stability, right?
Yeah, stability
Yeah, they
for
want
the country.
stability. And whereas an American, that almost sounds, politically heretical, because we want at least our presidents. Of course, the other people in government don't tend to have term limits, but we don't want our president in more than 8 years because we don't want some kind of dynasty. That's what we fled from, right?
Right.
That's
Well,
what we
yeah.
tried to get away from.
Yeah, I mean, our country is a representative democracy and a republic. So we don't want a strong leader that's going to have the ability to starve 7 million people, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. Well, and here's the flip side. So, if you look back, 826 is the founding of Russia, or the Kievan Rus, which is ancient Russia. They were essentially probably one of the more purest forms of democracy at that time that has ever been around. They had something called a veche bell. You ring it, and anybody from the city, town, whatever, could come in and debate policy and what they would do.
Okay.
So you have that going for a couple hundred years, and then you have the Mongolian invasion, and that kind of system, that more looser system, versus one of the largest empires that have ever existed. They were completely taken over. So like you were saying, for us it's different to understand because the United States, we started off under a monarch, and then we fled that. We wanted to get away from that. They started off more free, and then they saw the Mongolians come in, and they saw what they had before as weak, so then they want something strong to fend off outside invaders. I mean, the United States, we're blessed because we have 2 oceans, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me ask you something. This may not be anything that you've studied, and Rick, I think this may have come up in our lunchtime conversations. The philosophical roots of an ideology like communism, what's happened to Russia. I know Karl Marx. Lenin and Stalin were influenced by Karl Marx. Karl Marx was very influenced by Georg Hegel, the Hegelian dialectic. Do you know anything? And if this isn't something you've studied, I don't want to press it. But as far as the philosophical roots of the type of government that Russia has been under, do either of y'all have any experience in that? That's something that I'm beginning to study a lot more. I'm no expert on it, but I'm just interested in. Obviously, Karl Marx had a huge influence on all of this, right?
So are you asking why? I'm just trying to rephrase it. But are you asking why Russia was more susceptible to communism, or
just the influences from a philosophical standpoint of because government and economic frameworks don't come out of a vacuum. They have influences, and the people, ideas have consequences. And I just wonder if that's anything that you've studied in your international studies. Again, maybe I'm going off on something that is it's something that I'm particularly interested in. I just didn't know if there's any philosophy that enters into your studies in international affairs.
Yeah. So again, because what we were kind of talking about earlier with the Russian identity, and how even with communism and those 70 years of no orthodoxy, essentially, people still return to it because of the Russian identity. And I think that's also, you could make an argument as to why communism became prevalent in Russia, is that if you study throughout Russian history, there's a kind of a idea of the country before yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple examples of this throughout history. There was at the point during the Kievan Rus, when there was 2 princes or something, and one wanted to take over the other province, or city-state essentially, and the prince essentially just sacrificed himself. He let the other one kill him to avoid a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of stories in Russia, like Russian history, of people sacrificing themselves for the betterment of the state. And so I think communism really played on that, because in communism, the state is your religion. It's the state over you.
Yeah. I guess in 1917, Lenin, the Bolshevik Revolution happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where did they get the idea of, obviously they're creating, they want something different. They don't want what was there before with the Tsar. They want a new framework, a new ideology, a new economic and social system, right? Mm-hmm. So what was the influence? I know Marx was a huge influence on Lenin and then Stalin. And so does that make sense? Or where did this, had the communist type of Marxist system been used previously by any other country, or was this something brand new that was created in 1917 in Russia?
Well, Marx, his ideology was really, Russia was the incubator, right?
Yeah.
So, as Our Lady said, those errors that are in the atheistic communist mentality, which really what it's going to do is, because we're body and soul, atheism strips the soul away from you.
Yeah.
And when you strip the soul away, that when you see a soulless person, you see a dead person.
Yeah.
So communism, what it did to Russia is it stripped the soul away from the country.
Yeah.
And that is why, after 70 years of that, even the communist leaders in the country started realizing, hey, maybe this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And internally the thing fell apart.
And I'll try to refine my answer a little more, because I understand more what you're asking. So I couldn't tell you where exactly it started or what influenced it per se, but I know that Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin and the other two, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, they weren't the first ones. So if you look at Russian history, there were radicals that were already acting before that. Alexander II, there's actually a cathedral built where he was assassinated. He was assassinated by essentially communist radicals. And that was mid-1800s till later 1800s, around the time that happened. So the roots were already kind of there before the revolution happened. It was essentially a perfect storm, because you had Nicholas II. He wasn't exactly a strong czar, and then the communists kind of took advantage of that.
Well, one of the things, and this is a totally different thing, but it's related. At least I'm doing some study on history of philosophy, and you got this guy John Wycliffe. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was an Englishman, lived in the 14th century, and he, for all intents and purposes, was a Protestant reformer. Okay. And he didn't believe in transubstantiation. He didn't believe in papal authority. He believed in sola scriptura. And all these ideas, and needless to say, they actually excommunicated him posthumously. I mean, they dug up his body and burned it out. I mean, the church, he was a troublemaker, right? Yeah. And so, but he planted all these ideas, and needless to say, it was not well received, but he was a rebel. And then you had this relatively quiet 15th century, where there really wasn't too much going on, and then the 16th century, everything blew up. But they look back and they say, wow, John Wycliffe, he was the one that planted the seeds, but he lived 150 years ago in England, and then all of a sudden in Germany with Martin Luther and Zwingli and Calvin and so anyway, that's what I'm trying to, I guess, and you've answered it, but I'm just curious as the seeds of revolution and where they started and what the beginning of it is.
Yeah, so there were revolutionaries in. That assassinated the Tsar, and his son cracked down on them.
Mm-hmm,
and then they became very repressed. And then the last Tsar, Nicholas II, he really didn't even want to be a czar.
Yeah.
So he was, in terms that he wasn't a strong leader, and the war went badly for Russian troops, very badly.
I guess it's kind of like the butterfly effect. So Vladimir Lenin's not his real name, so that's an alias.
Oh.
His real last name is Ulyanov, and I believe he watched his brother be executed because. So you had the radicals that assassinated the Tsar, Alexander II, and Alexander II, he's known for freeing the serfs,
His whole family got killed, right?
No,
that
that was
Oh,
that's the
okay.
second.
Okay.
That was his grandfather.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's
And-
predating, yeah.
Yeah, so
And-
that would be his grandfather, and his grandfather did everything that they were asking for.
Yeah, they were wanting.
And he still got it. Still got it.
And he got assassinated.
Let me just ask you both, especially as a young person, and you see what's going on in our culture today, and especially with young people. And we talked about the influence on college campuses and all that. What? I don't know if you have conversations with people your own age, and about the trends in the culture and the kind of the Marxist swing and BLM and some of the things going on. What's your assessment of American culture in 2020 in light of your knowledge of international politics and affairs?
I would say definitely. I discuss politics and stuff with my friends, and something that maybe not a lot of people would admit publicly, and it's that concept you're saying of people being afraid to speak publicly, but is that there's kind of this culture that's being propagated where you have to, you can't hold certain ideas, and you can't say certain things, you can't do certain things, otherwise you'll get persecuted for it, which to me, and obviously people I know and I've talked to, I mean, that's not really what America was founded on or stands for. And because, we live in a country where you can be communist and still live your life and be free. But it seems as though it's kind of taking a direction to where you can't hold certain ideologies. If you do, then you're ostracized.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I thank you for coming in and being with us, Luke Metz. Rick, I'm going to give you the last word. Anything you want to say about Fatima, Russia, Putin, America, anything?
Well, I think, our country, one thing we could do is just take a step back, take a deep breath, and relax a little bit. That would probably be the one big thing we could do. And for the message of Fatima is to pray the rosary. So it's on the emblem here in the studio, and that is a message that will do the most good for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Dick Lyles also mentioned. Of course, that's the message of Fatima.
That's the message.
You go back every single month, Our Lady appeared to those separate children. She said a lot of things, and one month it might have been the vision of hell, and one month it might have been the secrets, but every single month she said, pray the rosary. There was never a vision that she didn't say that. So I think to say that was important to Our Lady would be an understatement, because that was the message. Pray for sinners, and pray for peace in the world, right?
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks to both of you. We're glad you guys were here. That was a fun conversation. I appreciate everybody who's still hanging with us on social media land. I know there were a few technical issues here and there, but I think we got those all worked out, right, Diane? And like I said at the end of the radio program, there's Monday, Joe and the team down in Houston will have GRN Alive Monday edition. I hope you'll tune in for that. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you, and thank you for listening and watching. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Did you get to go through all your notes?
No, there's too many here, but I had them in case I needed them.
It's something you could talk for hours.
I could,
Yeah.
you could talk for hours and